Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Skithyrix the Blight Dragon, otherwise known as Skittles. So Skithyrix the Blight Dragon is a 5 mana 4/4 flyer with Infect, and he's got black to give himself haste and black to regenerate. So obviously, like many Voltron commanders before him, Skithyrix's main deal here is that you want to pump his power up to 10, attack an opponent, and immediately kill them with 10 poison counters. The problem is there's just not a whole lot of ways of doing that in mono black, so finding cards that are going to pump Skithyrix and are efficient is going to be the big hurdle to clear in this deck. So with that said, we do have Nettle Cyst here as part of our beatdown plan, which we can equip to Skithyrix, and then it by itself is at least +1, and then we need to get another 5 artifacts and or enchantments onto the battlefield in order to get Skithyrix up. Now again, you could spread the damage over multiple turns, deal 5 poison to your opponent on one turn and then 5 the next turn, but really you want to be able to one-shot them. So in the pump section, our main cards that we're going to want to have access to are Lash Writhe and Nightmare Lash. So these are 4 mana equipments that give the equipped creature +1/+1 for each swamp you control. And they're both 4 mana equipment that can basically equip for free. In the case of Nightmare Lash, you just pay 3 life to equip. In the case of Lash Writhe, you pay double Phyrexian black to equip, so 4 life basically. So you can have Lash Writhe or Nightmare Lash in play, then you cast Skithyrix, you equip it basically for free, give Skithyrix haste, and kill your opponents, although that does require that you have 6 swamps in play. There's also Unspeakable Symbol, which is pay 3 life to put a +1 counter on target creature, which we can activate as many times as we have life to pay for it. So in the case of Skithyrix, we're going to need to activate this 6 times in order to get Skithyrix up to 10 power, which means we're going to need to pay 18 life. We've also got Cranial Plating, which is basically another version of Nettle Cyst, but it only cares about artifacts and not enchantments. There's Heraldic Banner. This is in here just because it is a mono rock that also pumps our black creatures. It only pumps it up to 5 power though. And then Champion's Helm is only +2, but it gives the equipped creature hexproof, so it's a way of making sure that Skithyrix doesn't get killed. And as I said, there just really aren't a lot of good options for pumping Skithyrix in mono black. Now there's some like instants and sorceries, but you really don't want to burn a spell that's only going to pump it for 1 turn. And also a lot of those spells are kind of expensive. So other cards in the deck, we've got our black card draw. We've got some combo pieces. We're already running Bolas's Citadel anyway, so we may as well throw in Divining Top and Reservoir into that combo as well. Some fast mana. Again, we want to get Skithyrix out as quickly as possible. Also, Lightning Greaves will protect it from removal and give it haste without us having to pay the black mana. Then is our lands go. We've got 21 swamps. We've got Urborg and Cabal Coffers, and Urborg in particular is useful for turning the rest of these non-swamp lands into swamps for the purposes of things like Nightmare Lash and Lash Writhe. Some additional things, obviously Cavern of Souls, we can name Skithyrix type and make it not counterable. A little bit of faster mana in Ancient Tomb and Gemstone Caverns. Then proliferating is going to be partially important. So Karn's Bastion. So let's say we manage to hit an opponent, but not for enough poison to actually kill them. We can eventually take them out of the game by proliferating until they get to 10 poison and dying. That's also why Staff of Completion is in here, because part of its mode is proliferating. So you can use this as just a mono rock or a card draw spell, but you can also proliferate. Shizo, because sometimes, although Skithyrix having flying will usually mean that it can't be blocked, our opponents can have creatures with flying, obviously. So we want a way to get it through those. Ink Moth Nexus is just another way of either dealing the final amount of poison damage. Let's say we hit our opponent with Skithyrix and then Skithyrix got killed. This is just a way of getting more poison, or it's a way of just getting poison onto our opponents that we can then proliferate later. Underdark Rift is just a removal spell that can get rid of, like, for example, artifacts, which is not so doable in mono black usually. Some more protection. Obviously, we already went over Champion's Helm and Lightning Greaves. We've also got Defense Grid and Imp's Mischief. These are just, again, more ways of making sure that Skithyrix doesn't get killed by removal or countered. Then we're going to want a whole bunch of ramp, and we're going to want more ramp than normal, again, because we want to make sure that we get Skithyrix out as fast as possible. There's even a Heartless Summoning here, which, although it does give -1, reducing the cost of Skithyrix by 2 can be a make or break part of that card. And some of our pump, like Unspeakable Evil, or Unspeakable Symbol rather, doesn't really care if we're getting -1 because it just pumps it up anyway. And then just some other things to note are we've got the keys, Manifold Key, Voltaic Key, Sonic Screwdriver to untap Monovault, Grim Monolith, the One Ring, etc. But it can also do things like untap Staff of Completion if we want to proliferate multiple times to pump the poison on our opponents. We've got some removal in case we need that. Then a bunch of stacks cards. So obviously this deck is not really so great about comboing our opponent out. Our main win condition is poisoning our opponents with Skithyrix, and to that end, we do need to make sure that we have the time to do that and that we are preventing our opponents from doing things. So we've got Chains of Mephistopheles to prevent extra card draw, but we also have Shieldred and Oaker's Bowmasters to punish extra card draw. And notably, specifically regarding Chains, if you actually look at our card draw spells, we've got Null Perfusion and the One Ring and Black Market connections, but then Adnaz doesn't draw cards, Bolus the Citadel doesn't draw cards, and Necropotence puts the cards directly into your hand, not drawing them. And we only have, as far as the cards that draw more cards go, we only have Black Market, Null Perfusion, and the One Ring anyway, so this can be useful. We've also got Contamination and Infernal Darkness, so these are cards that color fix everything into black, so Contamination is during your upkeep, sack a creature or sack Contamination. Whenever a land is tapped for mana, it produces black instead of its normal type and amount. So obviously we do need to have a creature every turn to sack to this, but it forces all of our opponent's lands to only tap for black mana. Similarly, Infernal Darkness is cumulative upkeep, black, and 1 life, and all lands produce black instead of their normal colors. Cursed Totem to shut off creature abilities. We don't have any creature abilities of our own anyway. Torpor Orb to shut off ETBs. Again, we don't have any ETBs other than, I guess, Bowmasters, which doesn't really matter anyway. And then we have things like Dothy, Opposition Agent, and Trinisphere is more ways of, again, just like protecting us from counterspells. Our opponents have to pay at least 3 to cast them. A little bit of sweeping, Damnation, Toxic Deluge. These are good to play before we cast Skithyrix. Tutors in black, of course, because why not? Expedition Map in here in particular is useful because we need to grab things like Urborg and Cabal Coffers more than normal. And then finally, we've got some proliferating related cards. So Throne of Geth can sack an artifact to proliferate. Ichor Rats puts a poison counter on each of our opponents, although this is an ETB trigger, so sometimes if we have Torpor Orb in play, this isn't going to work, but most of the time it's fine. This just gets the initial poison counter on all of our opponents so that we can eventually proliferate them out of the game if necessary. And then Infectious Inquiry is you draw 2, lose 2 life, each opponent gets a poison, so it's the spell version of Ichor Rats. So again, our primary win condition here is Skithyrix, and then either pumping it to 10 power so we can one-shot our opponents, or at least pumping it to 5 so that we can two-shot them, and then using a combination of stacks and various other protection to make sure that Skithyrix doesn't get countered or killed, or failing that, if Skithyrix gets taken out of the game, poisoning our opponents and then proliferating them to death. And yep, that is Skithyrix the Blight Dragon.